So we're going to go over some of the best settings for console and PC players. Keep in mind, most of these settings are going to be applicable to you regardless of what platform you're on, whether you're on console or PC. So the first things first here is your aiming input device. Obviously, I'm playing on a PC actually, but I'm using a controller. So I'm going to be putting my input device at controller. So, just apply the settings depending on what console or platform you're on. All right, so let's move on to the graphics tab. So for the graphics tab, you have to keep in mind that my settings are going to be different than what you have because of your setup. So I've got a certain monitor and also a certain setup for my PC. So what you see here is going to vary differently just depending on what you have. But for the most part, you just got to use whatever option is more applicable to your situation. So for me personally, I got 1920 by 1080p because that is what my monitor is capable of. And here I got my refresh rate on auto. And then for my VSync, I have this on off. So generally players do recommend having this VSync off, mainly because if you have it on, it's going to cause a bit of an input lag. Some people do notice it, some don't, but just to be safe, we usually have this off. And the same thing goes for the VSync menus. A frame rate limit, I have it on custom. Now this is just what my monitor is capable of. It's a 144 hertz monitor, so I do have it set to 140 here. And for the menu custom frame rate, you don't really need a lot of frame rate on your menu settings, so you could turn this down if you want to, but I just keep it on 60 because I know that my PC and monitor is capable of handling it, and it's just for my viewing pleasure. Now for aspect ratio, I do have this on automatic. Brightness, you can just set it up to whatever your monitor settings are. If you have a very low setting on brightness for your monitor, then you might want to turn this up, for example. Display gamma is just 2.2. Focus mode, I do have this off mainly because I do not have a widescreen monitor. So if you do have a widescreen monitor, maybe this is something you will consider turning on. Display adapter, this is my graphics card. So like I was saying, it really depends on what kind of build PC that you have. So mine is a RTX 2070. So you might be able to turn up the settings on some of the settings that we do have here. Restart shaders, I don't really mess around with this or the on-demand texture streaming. Now moving on to the next tab here, we got the quality tab. Custom quality presets, I have this on custom. Render resolution is 66. Now for the quality tab, I do have my quality presets on custom because for the most part, I don't want the game to use too much VRAM because at the same time, if it does, then I'm going to notice some performance issues, a lot of lagging, screen tearing, etc., jittering. And obviously that's going to be a very bad experience for me personally because of my graphics card and PC build. My PC build is a pre-built PC, so it's not really optimized as much as it possibly can for YouTube and recording videos at the same time, ironically enough. So I tend to get by with just medium settings, and it's been this way for a couple years now. So and I do just fine, and the graphics do look okay just for me. So depending on whatever graphics card or your PC build is, then you might want to bump these settings up if your PC can handle it. But for me personally, I get by with just medium here. And also it's a good thing to just, go through these settings here and see if it's going to affect your estimated VRAM usage. But there are a few important settings here that I do want to have on, such as bullet impact sprays, shader quality, I just have this on low. Nearby tessellation, I have this on nearby only. Level of detail distance range, I have this on standard. Most of these settings, they're not really going to affect your performance in gunfights, and that's mainly what I want to play the game for. I don't really care too much about the quality unless it affects my VRAM usage. So these right here, as you can see in the bar on the bottom right hand corner, it doesn't really affect it too much. So volumetric quality control, this doesn't affect anything at all either. But also, I do want to leave some room for some performance when I'm playing the game. So just to be safe, I just put some stuff on medium. Green space shadows, I do have this on. Shadow map resolution on medium. Everything here, you can pause the screen if you need to, if you want to go ahead and copy these. But like I said, it really depends on your PC setup here. All right, again, another useless setting on screen space reflection, I just have this off. As you can see here on the left image, if you take a look at the middle of the screen, the puddle, you don't really see any reflection there. But on the right side, if you do have it on, you are going to see a reflection. And to me personally, I don't really care too much about those little tiny details. Unless you're one of those people who care about the game visually, then you might want to have that on. And of course, if your PC can handle it. Now, for me personally, I have my NVIDIA DLS on performance, mainly because, again, I care about performance. Depth of field, I do have this off. Now, this is a personal preference, and I find this to be an advantage because if I'm aiming down sights and the rest of my screen is going to be blurred, I definitely want to be able to see opponents that are in my field of view. So having it on might blur some enemies that I wouldn't see, and that's obviously going to cause some issues, and I might lose a gunfight to somebody I didn't know was there. So that's mainly why I have it there. Now for gameplay, for the color customization, I don't really mess around with this. I'm not colorblind, but if you are, you might want to play around with this. Field of view. So with field of view, there are some pros and cons here. So if you do have a really high field field of view, yes, your screen is going to be a lot bigger. You're going to see a lot more in your field of view, but the drawback is that your targets are going to be a lot tinier, which is going to make your aiming just a little bit tougher. So you're going to have to be a little bit more accurate with your shots. But the main thing that also is a positive to having a really high field of view is that it gives the illusion that you have no recoil. So visually, it will help you out, even though mechanically, it's not really going to reduce your recoil. So it might help you out in the psychology department, but as far as your actual gunfights, it's not really going to reduce your recoil, but it will help out visually, if that makes sense. So that's why I do like the field of view. Also, it just helps you to see more on your screen. So obviously that's going to help you out in gunfights and just staying alive a lot longer. Now, these are huge. You got to turn off world motion blur as well as weapon motion blur. It's just an eyesore. I don't know why you would want that. I want everything to be crystal clear so I can see what's going on around me when I'm moving around the map. NVIDIA Reflex low latency, I do have this on. I don't have this on plus boost because, as you can see in the description, it can reduce latency, but it is going to increase your GPU power draw. So this just goes back to the fact of the matter. It depends on what your PC is capable of. All right, moving on to the audio. So for the audio, it's not really too complex here. The only thing that I really have off is the music volume, mainly because I just find it to be annoying and I like to focus on my gameplay, immersing myself in the environment, hearing for footsteps, battle chatter, etc. All that stuff is important to me because we have all the tools given to us in the game. We have the minimap, we have visual, audio cues. Audio cues are huge. You can hear when somebody's reloading in the other room, or you can hear enemy footsteps. You know exactly where to turn your attention to. So all of this stuff is very important. So I don't want to hear any music at all whatsoever when I'm playing the game, and it's going to give me an edge. All right, dialogue volume, sound effects volume, those are all very important. We want to have those on 100. Again, you want to hear battle chatter, footsteps, etc., people reloading or whatever. Mute game when minimized, I have this off. This is all just personal preference, by the way. There isn't really, a huge advantage with some of these, like the hit marker sound effects. Audio mix is definitely something that will change over time, but I find to have home theater to be just fine. Killstreak music, I have this off once again. I don't care to hear the music. I just want to focus on the gameplay and hear potential enemy footsteps or whatever. Mono audio, definitely I have this off because if I have this on, then I won't be able to tell which direction footsteps are coming from or gunshots. So if there's a gunshot happening to my left side, I'm definitely going to be hearing that on the left headphone that I'm wearing right now. So obviously this is going to be very important. It's just going to point you in the right direction with that visual cue. All right, the rest of the settings here, you can use whatever you want to. There is really no advantage or disadvantage with the voice chat here. And also you could play audio tests as well. So that's pretty nice about what these settings offer this year. Now moving on to the interface. So for the interface, not really too much going on here. I just have the subtitles off. Again, I don't want any distractions on my screen. Don't want too much going on. Just want to be able to focus on the gunfights and staying alive. And same thing goes here with the text chat. Don't really care too much about it. Telemetry, this is really nice if you want to have these features on your screen. As you see in the top left hand corner of my screen, I do have my FPS counter, latency, and GPU. These are the main ones that I personally like to keep an eye on. So this is all just personal preference. I like to see how many frames I have, whether or not the server I'm on is good, and whether or not my GPU is working way too hard and I need to potentially shut down some programs I have running on in the background. All right, now for the HUD elements, this is something that a lot of people do overlook. And this is a quick tip here. So for the horizontal HUD bounds, you definitely want to minimize this, but not too much. You don't want it all up in your face. So basically that's what you see here on the screen with the arrows. You want to squeeze that in a little bit more just so that you don't have to turn your head all the way just to look at the minimap. It's nice to just have to just move your eye like at a very short distance. That way you can keep an eye on what's going on right in front of you. So depending on your monitor screen or whatever TV you play on, you do want to minimize this to your liking. All right, so for vertical bounds, it's the same exact case. You just want to minimize it again to your liking or whatever fits your monitor size. All right, minimap shape, definitely want to use the square. As you can see, there's more real estate there on the screen. Definitely there's a lot more real estate there on the minimap, so square is definitely the way to go. Minimap rotation, I do have this on. Crosshair bobbing, I have this off as well. This is something new that we didn't have in previous Call of Duties, and I don't want to go ahead and change it this year. And having it on, I don't really see a benefit to it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I do want to just keep it simple here at this point. All right, now moving on to the most important tab here. So for sensitivity, I normally will generally advise you to just go into a private match and start off between a 4 and 8 sensitivity. This is generally what people usually start off with, and you just have to find out what works best for you. For me personally, it usually falls between 6 or 8. So I just kind of have to get used to the game first, see which sensitivity I like, and that's how I determine what's the best sensitivity for me. And that's the same thing that you should do. Go into a private match, play a few matches, go into a private private match and just play around with your settings and adjust it accordingly. All right, so for ground and air vehicle sensitivity, this doesn't really matter too much. It's just personal preference. Custom sensitivity per zoom, I have this on as well. So these you need to just adjust to your liking. All right, so for ADS sensitivity multiplier, I generally have it on 0.80. This is what usually works for me. But if you need to figure out what you need to use, then go into a private match once again and just play around with the settings here, whether it's 0.8, 0.9, 0.7. It's all going to vary from person to person, especially since we're using different controllers, and the stick heights are going to be different depending on if you're using KontrolFreeks or not. Okay, so for button layout preset, I have it on tactical flipped. I find this to be the most beneficial setting for me because you don't need to take your fingers off of the controller if you need to crouch or go prone. This is especially helpful in gunfights versus having to waste your time taking your finger off of the thumbstick and then, you know, pressing the circle button. And a melee is something that I rarely ever do personally, so I don't really need to prioritize that. That's why I have my crouch and my melee switched here, and that's what tactical flipped is. Also, with the L1 and R1, it's flipped. You know, there's less lag, there's less input lag when you have the aim down sight and fire weapon button as your L1 and R1 versus having it on the triggers. That's why I use tactical flipped. It's a lot more beneficial. Everything else here I have on standard. Controller vibration, I have this off. Weapon fire threshold, I have this off as well. ADS sensitivity transition timing, I have this on instant. ADS sensitivity multiplayer steady aim, I have this on 1. Stick layout is default. Controller orientation, I have this on up. ADS stick swap is off. Left trigger input. So when it comes to dead zone, this is something that's going to vary from player to player because it depends on the age of your controller. So if you have an older controller, then your dead zone might be a little bit lower or higher. Just really depends on the health of your sticks. So if you find that your player is moving too much on its own without you touching the controller at all, then you're going to have to increase the dead zone little by little. So as soon as your character stops moving, then that's when you stop adjusting the dead zone, if that makes sense. So this is something that you would generally do in a private match as far as dead zone settings go. All right, and last but not least, under the controller settings, we have the gameplay tab. So for target aim assist, I do have this on. Aim assist is on as well. Weapon mount activation is ADS. Weapon mount movement exit is on. Depleted ammo weapon switch is on as well, or you can have this off. It's all personal preference. Blind fire, I have this on. Automatic airborne mantle, I have this off because the last thing I want to do is mantle onto something when I didn't mean to, and that can get you in a lot of trouble. Mantle stance queuing, I have this off. Automatic sprint, this is a personal preference. I like to have it on. This will preserve the health of my joysticks. For auto move forward, I actually have this setting off mainly because if you push your stick forward once, then your guy is going to just start moving. Obviously, you want to be in full control of the movement of your character when it comes to this feature, so make sure you have auto move forward off. Sprint cancels reload, I have this off. Sprinting door bash, I have this off as well. Last thing I want to do is just bash into a door. Enemies hear me and they're alerted that I'm there, so obviously I want to be as stealth as possible. Don't want to give them any audio cues at all. Slide behavior, I have this on tap. Aim down sight behavior is hold. Equipment is hold. Steady aim behavior is hold. Automatic is also hold. Automatic weapon and fire behavior is also hold. Tap to reload for reload behavior. Scoreboard behavior, I have this on toggles. And that about wraps it up for the best settings on console and PC. Make sure to leave a like on the video if you did find it enjoyable, and make sure to subscribe to make your way back to the channel. Join Turbo Nation today, make it official, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Yo, if you guys are always on your computer all day or you like to game for long sessions, definitely check out GamerAdvantage.com for these blue light blocking glasses. Quite literally the best blue light glasses that you can ever find on the market. Make sure to check out GamerAdvantage.com and just learn more about it, man. There's so many benefits to keeping your eyes nice and healthy. You won't feel that strain at the end of the day, and you'll go to sleep like a baby at the end of the day, and that's the best part. You won't feel tired at all. Definitely check out GamerAdvantage.com. Use code TURBO at checkout.